Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning into Infamous Devils. Today, we'll be having an interview with a very, very famous murderer. You might know him, Charles Manson. Charles Manson was an American criminal and cult leader who was born on November 12th, 1934. You might know him for the notorious connections he had to the brutal slaying of pregnant actress Sharon Tate. He was also the former of the Manson family cult. Our interview went on for an hour and a half, and these are some of the highlights from it. Good evening, Mr. Manson. Now, let's dive straight into the questions, shall we? So, it's clear that you're guilty, but from speaking to people that you've spoke to for the past year, we've learned that you haven't mentioned remorse, or you haven't felt any remorse at all. Is that true? You feel no remorse on what you've done?
Remorse for what? You people have done everything in the world to me. Doesn't that give me equal right? I can do anything I want to you people at any time I want to, because that's what you've done to me. If you spit in my face and smack me in the mouth and throw me in solitary confinement for nothing, what do you think's going to happen when I get out of here?
Okay. And you don't feel guilty at all?
There's no need to feel guilty. I haven't done anything I'm ashamed of. Maybe I haven't done enough. I might be ashamed of that, for not doing enough, for not giving enough, for not being more perceptive, for not being aware enough, for not understanding, for being stupid. Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better. Then when I felt like I've really offered society something.
Mr. Manson was never really cooperative with us. He was very argumental, very lucid. He never really just had the conversation with us as a back and forth, easygoing conversation, just as we'd ask a question and he'd answer us. But he was giving us more of riddles back, more stuff to solve. And that's what made this very interesting. With us in our interview today, we have the author of the Manson Murders book, Kurt Gentry. He's joined us to give us his thoughts on what he's written in the book and what he feels about the Manson murders. So, Kurt, do you think that Charles felt any remorse? Because you've written that he doesn't.
Have you seen any today? I mean, perhaps he believes totally in his own mind that he's not guilty.
You guys got this stuck in your head that I've murdered somebody. You've got it stuck in your brain that I murdered somebody. What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here.
Believe it or not, Charles is actually telling the truth. He has actually never murdered anyone. He never took part in actual killings. He only directed people of his cult to kill people. He didn't physically kill anyone. Now, this is what brings me to talk about one of his most famous murders. The murder of Sharon Tate, the famous actress. You might have heard of her. Well, in August 1969, Manson gathered a group of his most loyal family followers to carry out his massacre among Hollywood's elite and beautiful people. The first of Manson's victims was murdered at the home Polanski had rented, located at 10,050 Seattle Drive in Benedict Canyon, an area just north of Beverly Hills. Polanski was away in London shooting a film, and the four victims had just returned home from dinner at the time of the murder. While Manson himself took no part in the actual killings, he directed four of his most obedient followers, Charles Tex, Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Casabian, to the address and directed them to kill everyone. According to one of the family members' statements, the Polanski household had been targeted because it represented the showbiz world that had rejected Manson. Stephen Parent had been visiting his friend Garrison when he became the Manson family's first victim. As he drove away from the house in the dark, early morning hours, he was spotted by the intruders and instantly shot dead. Casabian was horrified by the shooting of the boy, and she remained outside to keep watch. Casabian acted as the getaway driver and was to become the star witness during the trial. When the other three broke into the house, they herded Tate, Frykowski, Folgers, and Sebring into the living room and tied them up. Sebring was shot and brutally kicked as he tried to defend Tate. During the terrifying murder spree, both Frykowski and Folger managed to escape from the house, but were chased and stabbed to death. At the trial, Casabian described how she saw Frykowski staggered out of the house, covered in blood, and she was horrified at the sight. She told him she was sorry, but despite her pleas to his attacker to stop, the victim was bludgeoned repeatedly. Folger escaped from the house with terrible injuries, but was caught on the front lawn and stabbed 28 times. These people had no mercy. They didn't care. Once they got orders from Manson, they did it. They had no heart. 8 months pregnant, Sharon Tate pleaded for the life of her unborn child. But no one really cared, did they? She was mercilessly stabbed in the stomach by Atkins. Casabian told of Atkins' chilling words to Tate before she stabbed her. She specifically said, "Look, bitch, I have no mercy for you. You're gonna die, and you better get used to it." Atkins then used Tate's blood to write the word pig on the front door. These guys, they were animals. They were sick. However, instead of this brutal massacre, citing the pathological Manson, he criticized the murders for being sloppy. Well, then that was over, like Sharon Tate's murder finished. But then the following night, Manson took similar family members, Watson and Krenkwinkle again, but he took a new one, Leslie Van Houten, to the Los Feliz address of the La Biancas, and the couple was murdered in a similarly horrifying fashion. So this Sharon Tate murder is what shows us that the Manson cult were ruthless. They really just didn't care. Anything Manson said, they'd do it because they were blinded by his faith and his teachings. Manson himself believed that he was Jesus. He believed he was the Messiah, because he thought that if there was ever going to be an apocalypse in the world, as the Messiah, him and his followers will get to hide in an underground hut in the desert. Yeah, this man was, he was fucking crazy. Don't know what's up with his brain, but he was right though. He had no part. Well, he did have a part, but he didn't actually murder anyone or kill anyone. He was just the mastermind behind everything. He never took part in it.